The rules change today, my fiancé announced. Starting now, half your paycheck goes to my kids. They need more than yours. I agreed, already knowing she'd regret it. On Sunday, my parents came for brunch, but when my mother walked into my son's room and saw what had been done to it, she screamed so loud the neighbors knocked. The rules change today, my fiancé announced, like she was reading a grocery list. I was standing at the sink, rinsing blueberries for Sunday brunch, still wearing my hospital hoodie. I'd worked a double shift, 2 emergency C-sections, a ruptured appendix, an elderly man whose heart kept trying to quit while I held him under anesthesia and begged his body to stay. I'm Charlie. I'm an anesthesiologist. I spend my life calculating doses, watching monitors, balancing the thin line between pain and silence. And somehow, I still wasn't prepared for the way she looked at me that morning. Calm, confident, already certain I would comply. Starting now, half your paycheck goes to my kids, she said. They need more than yours. The kitchen smelled like coffee and butter and a lie that had been proofing for weeks. I didn't answer right away. I wiped my hands on a towel, slow enough to buy myself a few seconds, and stared at her, Alyssa, standing with her arms crossed, hair perfect, voice gentle in that dangerous way people speak when they're not asking, they're declaring. Half, I repeated. Don't act shocked, she replied. You make great money, and you have one child. I have two. Leah has braces coming up. Danny needs a better school. And your son, she tilted her head, pity in her eyes like a weapon. Max already has everything. My chest tightened. Max's laugh echoed in my mind from the night before. Him on the living room rug, building a spaceship out of tiny plastic bricks, narrating the journey like it was real. Alyssa stepped closer and softened her tone, the way she did when she wanted her demands to feel like love. This is what family looks like, Charlie. Equal sacrifice, equal care. I looked past her to the hallway, where Max's door was slightly open. Inside, the glow-in-the-dark planets on his ceiling still faintly shimmered from last night's reading time. That room wasn't just furniture. It was his anchor. I could have argued. I could have said, you don't get to rank children. I could have asked why her rules always involved my money, my space, my bending. Instead, I nodded once. Okay, I said, half. Alyssa blinked, pleasantly surprised. That's mature, she said, like she'd been training me. Sure, I replied, and forced my face into neutrality. We'll do it. She smiled, the kind of smile that believes it has won. But as I poured blueberries into a bowl, I already knew something she didn't. I hadn't agreed because she was right. I'd agreed because I was done pretending she was safe. When Alyssa and I met, I was newly divorced and running on fumes. My ex-wife and I had split quietly. No cheating, no screaming, just two exhausted people who stopped speaking the same language. We shared custody of Max, and I was terrified of becoming the cliché, the father who only shows up with a backpack and an apology. Alyssa saw that fear and treated it like a lever. She loved how responsible I was. She said it all the time. You're different, she'd whisper at night. You actually show up. She had 2 kids from her previous marriage. Leah, 11, sharp and guarded, and Danny, 8, hyper and sweet, always hungry for attention. Their father floated in and out of their lives like bad weather, arriving loud, leaving damage. At first, I wanted to help. It felt good to be the stable adult in a storm. I paid for dinner more often than not. I covered small things, shoes, school supplies, a field trip fee that couldn't wait. Alyssa praised me publicly for it. Charlie is such a provider, she'd tell friends. A real man. And every compliment came with an expectation attached, like a receipt. The first time she pushed hard was when she moved into my apartment. It was a modest place, but in a good neighborhood. 2 bedrooms, bright windows, close to Max's school and my hospital. 1 room was mine. 1 room was Max's. Alyssa stood in Max's doorway the day she moved in, scanning it like a real estate agent. He has his own room, she said. Yes, I answered. He's been through a lot. He needs stability. She smiled. Of course, I would never change that. And for a while, she didn't. But then the comments started. It's weird, she'd say. How he has this whole shrine, and my kids have what? A corner of the living room when they're here. They can use the pullout, I offered. She sighed. That's not a home, Charlie. That's camping. So, I made changes. I bought a trundle bed. I added storage. I tried to create space without touching Max's room, because Max's room was the one part of this life that was purely for him. No negotiation, no guilt, no family math. Alyssa didn't like that. Her favorite argument was fairness. Your son shouldn't get more just because he's yours, she'd say. My kids shouldn't suffer because you're biased. Biased. As if being a father was prejudice. Then came the money conversations. Not about bills, about entitlement. Alyssa would watch me transfer money into Max's college fund and purse her lips. Must be nice, she'd say, to plan for one child's future. I'm planning for my child, I'd reply, trying to keep it calm. That's what parents do. And what about my kids, she'd ask. Do you see them as my kids forever? Or are we building something together? It always ended the same way. My boundary framed as my failure. And slowly, I noticed something uglier. She didn't ask for help. She tested how much she could take. A new tablet for Danny because Max has a laptop. Private tutoring for Leah because Max gets attention from you. A bigger grocery budget because growing kids need more. Every time, the logic sounded compassionate, until I caught her on the phone one evening, thinking I wasn't home. He'll do it, she said, laughing softly. He always does. He's guilty. Divorced dads are like that. You just steer them. My stomach went cold. I stood in the hallway listening to the woman I planned to marry describe me like a puppet. That night, I didn't confront her. I planned. Because in the operating room, I'd learned the difference between panic and preparation. When something goes wrong, you don't scream. You move. So, when she finally said, half your paycheck goes to my kids, I nodded. And I prepared the paperwork she didn't realize she was signing. My parents were coming for brunch on Sunday. My mother, Rita, was the kind of woman who could make a room go silent without raising her voice. She'd spent her life watching people try to manipulate her and failing. My father, Ed, was quieter, gentler, but his calm had weight. When he spoke, it meant something had crossed a serious line. Alyssa knew they were coming. She was unusually cheerful that morning, wearing a sweater that screamed perfect fiancé, setting plates like she was auditioning for a magazine spread. Max woke up excited. Grandma's coming, he said, bouncing in his socks. Can I show her my spaceship? Of course, I told him. As I cooked, Alyssa floated around, adjusting flowers, wiping imaginary dust, creating the illusion of control. The kids, Leah and Danny, watched cartoons, their shoes kicked off near the couch. When my parents arrived, Max launched himself at them. Grandma, Grandpa. My mother hugged him tight, then kissed my cheek. You look tired, she murmured. Long week, I said. She glanced around, her eyes sharp, reading the room. Alyssa stepped forward with her brightest smile. Rita, Ed, I'm so happy you're here. Charlie has been amazing. He made everything. My mother's smile was polite, not warm. She turned back to Max. Show me your room, sweetheart, she said. I want to see that spaceship. My heart stuttered. A warning bell rang in my ribs, the same instinct that tells me a patient's oxygen is about to drop before the monitor shows it. Maybe after we eat, I started, but Max was already pulling her hand, leading her down the hall. Alyssa didn't look concerned. She didn't even look up from the coffee. That told me everything. The door to Max's room opened. There was a beat of silence, one frozen second where the world held its breath. Then my mother screamed. Not a startled yelp, not a gasp, a scream of pure, furious horror. What did you do? I sprinted down the hall. My father followed. Alyssa walked, slow, composed, like she'd been waiting for this. My mother stood in the doorway, her face pale and shaking. Max was pressed against the wall, eyes wide, hands clenched, like he wanted to vanish. And his room, it wasn't his room anymore, The bed with the rocket ship blanket was gone. In its place, a brand new bunk bed covered in glittery unicorn sheets. Max's planet poster was ripped off the wall and crumpled in a corner. His bookshelf was half empty, books shoved into a cardboard box labeled in thick marker, Max Stuff. His desk, his little work desk where he drew planets and wrote messy letters, was gone. Replaced with a white vanity table, with a mirror, and Leah's hair accessories scattered across it. And on the floor, in the middle of the chaos, lay Max's spaceship. Broken, pieces snapped off, tossed aside like trash. My throat went tight. I didn't look at Alyssa yet. I couldn't. My mother's voice cracked as she spoke. "Charlie, where is his bed?" My father stepped closer, jaw clenched. Alyssa finally arrived at the doorway and sighed like my mother was being dramatic. "Oh my God," she said. "It's just a room." My mother turned on her, eyes blazing. "Just a room," she shouted. "You took my grandson's room." Alyssa folded her arms. "I reorganized," she corrected. "We're a family now. The kids needed equal space." Max had an entire room to himself like a king. Leah and Danny deserve more than a pull-out couch. I felt something in me go very still. Alyssa looked at me, waiting for me to back her up. "You agreed to the new rules," she said, voice sweet, sharp underneath. "Half your paycheck for my kids. That means we're finally doing things fairly. Space is part of that." My mother stepped into the room, carefully picking up the broken spaceship piece by piece. Her hands trembled. Max whispered, barely audible, "I told her not to." My mother's face softened for 1 second as she looked at him. "Oh, baby," she said. "This isn't your fault." Then she rose slowly and looked at me again. "Charlie," she said, quieter now, "did you know she was going to do this?" I met her gaze. "No," I said, "but I'm going to fix it. Right now," Alyssa scoffed. "Fix it? By what? Putting everything back so my kids can feel like guests again?" I finally turned to her. "You broke his spaceship," I said, voice low. "It's a toy," she snapped. "It's not a toy to him," I replied. Alyssa rolled her eyes like I was a tedious patient. "I can't believe you're doing this in front of your parents," she said. My father spoke for the first time, voice quiet and terrifying. "I can't believe you did this at all." Alyssa snapped her head toward him. "Excuse me?" He didn't flinch. "This room belonged to a child," he said. "And you treated it like a bargaining chip." Alyssa's cheeks reddened, but she recovered fast, turning the moment into performance. "I'm trying to create fairness," she said loudly. "Charlie has spoiled Max for years out of guilt. Meanwhile, my kids are constantly reminded they come second. This was necessary." My mother's mouth opened, ready to destroy her. But I lifted a hand, not to stop my mother, to take control. "Max," I said gently, "go to the kitchen with Grandpa. Take the blueberries, help him." Max hesitated. His eyes flicked to my mother. She nodded at him. Soft. "Go, sweetheart." He left. My father followed him, closing the hall distance with a heavy silence. Now it was just me, Alyssa, and my mother in the wreckage. I reached into the hall closet and pulled out a folder. Alyssa's eyes narrowed. "What's that?" I opened it and placed 2 documents on the vanity table she dared to put in my son's room. "This," I said, tapping the first page, "is the agreement you wanted. The one I signed." Her face lit with triumph for half a second. "Good," she said. "So you," and this I continued flipping to the next page, "is the clause you didn't read, because you thought I'd just hand you money like a vending machine." She froze. I read it aloud, calm as a surgeon. "No party may alter the living space of any minor child without written consent of the child's legal parent. Any violation voids the shared budget agreement and constitutes grounds for immediate termination of cohabitation." Alyssa's mouth fell open. "You," she started. My mother exhaled like she'd been holding her breath underwater. Alyssa grabbed the paper, scanning it fast. Her hands shook. "You tricked me," she hissed. "No," I said evenly. "I protected my son. You tricked yourself by thinking you could take and take and take because I wanted peace." Her eyes flashed with rage. "You can't throw me out," she snapped. "Where are we supposed to go? You'd kick out children?" I stared at her. You didn't worry about where Max was supposed to go in his own home, I said. You decided he could be displaced. You decided his comfort was negotiable. Alyssa's voice rose. You're choosing your kid over mine. Yes, I said, without hesitation, because he's my responsibility, and I'm not marrying someone who sees him as competition. My mother's eyes shimmered with fierce pride. Alyssa's face twisted. She tried tears next, flipping the switch like a practiced act. Charlie, please, I was just trying to make us equal. You said you wanted a family. I do, I replied. But I won't build a family by tearing down my child. My mother stepped closer, voice quiet, lethal. You will pack your things, she said to Alyssa. Today. Alyssa looked at me expecting me to soften. I didn't. And that's when the knock came at the front door. A neighbor. Concerned by the scream. My mother had screamed so loudly that the neighborhood had heard justice arriving. Alyssa left that afternoon. Not gracefully, not quietly. She stormed through the apartment, grabbing clothes, yelling about how I was heartless, how my parents poisoned me, how Max would grow up selfish and cold. My mother didn't argue. She watched, steady. My father stayed with Max in the kitchen, keeping him distracted with blueberries and stories, protecting him from the noise. When Alyssa finally slammed the door behind her, the apartment fell into a silence so deep I could hear my own breathing. Max walked into the hallway, eyes searching. Is she gone? He asked. Yes, I said gently. He looked at the broken spaceship still in my hands. I'd been holding it like it was fragile glass. Did I do something bad? He whispered. My heart cracked. No, I said immediately. You did nothing wrong. Then why did she? His voice faded. I knelt to his level. Because sometimes adults forget that children are people, I said. And sometimes adults try to fix their pain by causing pain somewhere else. That's not your fault. Max blinked hard. Can we fix the ship? He asked. Yes, I said, swallowing a lump in my throat. We're going to fix it, and we're going to fix your room. That night, my parents stayed late. My father helped me move furniture back. My mother rehung Max's new planet poster and smoothed his blankets like she was restoring sacred ground. Max slept with the spaceship pieces beside his pillow. Over the next week, Alyssa bombarded me with messages. Anger, pleading, guilt. You ruined my kids' stability. You're punishing them because you're obsessed with Max. I made one mistake. One mistake. I never replied with emotion. I replied with boundaries. I arranged for her to pick up the rest of her things with a third-party present. I changed the locks. I documented everything because I'd learned something brutal. When people feel entitled to your life, they don't stop when you ask nicely. They stop when you close the door. A few days later, I received a message from a number I didn't recognize. It was Alyssa's ex-husband, or rather, his current partner, the mother of Leah and Danny's half-sibling. Someone who'd seen Alyssa's patterns up close. I don't know you, the text said, but thank you. She's done this before. She turns kids into weapons. I'm glad at least one child didn't get sacrificed this time. I read it twice, my throat tight. My mother, when I told her, just nodded slowly. Sometimes, she said, the world gives you proof you're not imagining it. A month later, Max rebuilt his spaceship. Not the exact same one. Better. Stronger. With new wings and a tiny LED light inside that made it glow in the dark. One night, as I tucked him in, he said quietly, Dad? Yeah, buddy. If someone takes your room, they're not family, right? I sat on the edge of his bed, feeling the weight of that question. A child shouldn't have to learn it this early. No, I said softly. They're not. He nodded, serious. Family ads, he said. They don't take. I kissed his forehead. That's right, I whispered. Alyssa wanted rules. She got them. Just not the ones she expected. Because here's the truth I finally accepted. My love is not a paycheck. My home is not a prize. And my son is not a bargaining chip. From now on, the only rule that matters is simple. No one gets to hurt my child and call it fairness.